Here's something that might ruin your morning coffee. The last opinion you argued about at Thanksgiving dinner, the one you were absolutely sure was yours, might not have been yours at all. I want you to think about that for a second. Think about the last political argument you got into with a friend or a family member. Think about the article you shared on Facebook last week that made your blood boil. Think about the thing you believe so strongly that you'd bet your house on it. What if I told you there's growing scientific evidence that a machine helped put that belief in your head? Not by telling you what to think, that would be too obvious, but by deciding what you see, and more importantly, what you never get to see. In November of 2025, a team of researchers did something no one had ever done before. They hijacked the algorithm on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, without asking the company for permission, and what they found should concern every single American who uses a smartphone. But I'll get to the details of that experiment in a few minutes. First, let me show you how we got here and why this matters to you personally, right now, today, on April 1st, 2026. Let's start with something basic. Every time you open Facebook, or scroll through X, or watch a video on YouTube, you are not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing the world as a machine thinks you want to see it. These platforms use something called a recommendation algorithm, and here's how it works in plain English. The algorithm watches everything you do, every link you click, every video you watch for more than 3 seconds, every post you linger on just a little too long. It builds a profile of you that's more detailed than anything your closest friend could describe. And then it feeds you more of what keeps you glued to the screen. Now here's the thing most people don't realize. The algorithm doesn't care whether what it shows you is true or false. It doesn't care whether it's good for you or bad for you. It has exactly one job: keep you scrolling, keep you clicking, keep you watching. Because the longer you stay, the more ads you see, and the more money the platform makes. And here's something that a study from Harvard's Kennedy School found in 2025. Young adults who actually understood how algorithms work, the ones who could explain the mechanics of a recommendation system, were less likely to correct misinformation and less likely to seek out different viewpoints. Knowing how the trap works didn't help them escape it. It actually made them more cynical and more passive. They just shrugged and accepted that the algorithm controls what they see. Back in 2011, a fellow named Eli Pariser wrote a book and coined the term filter bubble. He warned that these algorithms would eventually trap us all in our own little information cocoons, where we only hear things we already agree with. Folks laughed at him. They said he was exaggerating. Fast forward to today, and we're living in exactly the world he described. More than 2.1 billion people log into YouTube every single month. Over 3 billion use Facebook and Instagram daily, and every one of them sees a different version of reality, custom-built by a machine that knows their weaknesses better than they do. But here's where it gets really interesting. For years, scientists have been trying to answer a simple question. Do these algorithms actually change what people believe, or do they just reflect what we already think? And for years, the answer was murky because the only people who could run the experiments were the platforms themselves. Let me tell you about a woman I'll call Diane. She's 64 years old, retired school librarian, lives in a 3-bedroom ranch house outside of Tampa, Florida. Diane has always considered herself a moderate. She voted for candidates from both parties over the years. She reads the local paper, watches the evening news, and prides herself on hearing all sides before making up her mind. In 2022, Diane joined Facebook to keep in touch with her grandkids. She liked a few posts, joined a group about gardening, and shared an article about Social Security that worried her. That one article, one single share, was all the algorithm needed. Within 2 weeks, her feed was flooded with content about government corruption, pension fraud, and conspiracy theories about retirement funds being raided by politicians. She didn't search for any of it. She didn't ask for any of it. The machine decided this was what would keep Diane scrolling, and it was right. 3 months later, Diane's son Marcus came to visit for Thanksgiving. He told me that the woman sitting at the head of the table that night was not the mother he recognized. She was angry suspicious, and absolutely convinced that the government was coming for her pension. She argued with everyone at dinner, something she'd never done before in her life. Marcus said she kept repeating phrases that sounded like headlines, short, punchy, emotional. It was like she was reading from a script, he said, but she didn't know it. Now, Diane's story isn't unusual. Multiply her experience by a few 100 million, and you start to understand the scale of what we're dealing with. But that's not even the most disturbing part. What I'm about to tell you next is something that was only proven scientifically a few months ago, and it changes the entire conversation about how much power these algorithms really have. In the summer of 2024, a team of researchers from Northeastern University, Stanford, and several other institutions decided to do something radical. They built a browser extension, think of it like an ad blocker, that could intercept and rearrange people's social media feeds in real time without asking X for permission. They recruited 1,256 Americans who used X regularly, Democrats and Republicans, all during the height of the 2024 presidential campaign, right when Biden dropped out of the race, right after the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Pennsylvania. High stakes, high emotions, the perfect laboratory. Here's what they did. They took one group and used an AI language model to push down the hostile political posts in their feed. Not remove them, just bury them lower in the scroll. They took another group and did the opposite, pushed the most aggressive, most partisan, most angry content right to the top. A third group saw their normal feed untouched. The results were published in Science, one of the most prestigious journals in the world, in November 2025. And here's what they found. In just 1 week, just 7 days, people who saw less hostile content became measurably warmer toward the other political party. People who saw more hostile content became measurably colder. The shift was about 2 points on a 100-point scale, which might not sound like much, but political scientists say that 2-point shift is roughly equal to 3 years of natural polarization change in America. The algorithm accomplished in 7 days what normally takes 3 years. Let that sink in for a moment. A machine, just by rearranging the order of posts on your screen, can shift your political feelings by an amount that normally takes years of real-world experience to produce. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but maybe that's just one study. Maybe X is uniquely bad. What about the other platforms? That's a fair question. And it brings me to one of the biggest and most controversial experiments in the history of social media research. In 2023, a massive team of 17 academics partnered with Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, to run a set of experiments during the 2020 US presidential election. They manipulated the feeds of about 20,000 users over 3 months. They published their findings in Science and Nature, and the headline was surprising: replacing Facebook's algorithm with a simple chronological feed showing posts in the order they were made, newest first, did not significantly change people's political attitudes in the short term. Meta celebrated this result. They said it proved their algorithm wasn't the problem. But here's what most people missed. During that exact experiment, Facebook had quietly made 63 emergency changes to its own algorithm specifically to reduce the spread of misinformation after the 2020 election. They called these break glass measures. And the researchers, the ones running the study, didn't prominently disclose this in their paper. In 2024, a group of other scientists published a critique in Science itself, arguing that those secret changes effectively sabotaged the experiment's control group. The algorithm being tested wasn't the normal algorithm, it was already a cleaned-up version of itself. It was like testing whether a car is dangerous after you've already installed new brakes. So what does all of this actually tell us? It tells us something uncomfortable. When platforms want to reduce polarization, they can. They know exactly which levers to pull. They just usually choose not to because the angry, hostile, divisive content is exactly what keeps you scrolling. So where does this leave us? Here's the thing I want you to understand. This isn't a hopeless situation. Not by a long shot. The 2025 study I told you about earlier, the one with the browser extension on X, it didn't just prove that algorithms can polarize us. When the hostile content was pushed down in people's feeds, their feelings toward the other side actually improved. That means there are technical solutions that work right now, today, and researchers are already building tools that regular people can use. That browser extension from the Northeastern study was just a prototype, but the technology exists for anyone to filter their own feed. It's like putting on glasses that let you see the world the algorithm was hiding from you. The researchers themselves described the tool as something that could be integrated into social media platforms tomorrow if the companies wanted to. The question isn't whether the technology exists. It does. The question is whether anyone has the will to use it. There are also things you can do right now, without any special technology. First, if you see something on social media that makes you furious before you share it, ask yourself one question: did I go looking for this, or did it come looking for me? That one question can break the algorithm's spell. Second, mix up your sources deliberately. Read something from a source you wouldn't normally choose, even if it's uncomfortable. The algorithm builds your cage one click at a time, and you can dismantle it one click at a time too. Third, check your settings. Most platforms now offer an option to see a chronological feed instead of an algorithmic one. It won't be as addictive, and that's the point. The world looks different when a machine isn't deciding what matters. Remember Diane from Tampa? The retired librarian who went from moderate voter to angry conspiracy believer in 3 months. Her son Marcus eventually sat down with her and walked her through what had happened to her feed. He showed her how to switch to a chronological view. He helped her unfollow the pages the algorithm had pushed on her. It took about 6 months, but she slowly came back. She started reading the local paper again, started calling her friends instead of arguing with strangers online. At Christmas last year, Marcus said something that stuck with me. He said, "She's not the same as she was before Facebook. She's more cautious now. She still has this edge that wasn't there before." And maybe that's the real damage here. Not that the algorithm turned Diane into someone she wasn't, but that it took something from her that she can't fully get back. The confidence that her thoughts are truly her own. The machine didn't tell Diane what to believe. It just built a world around her where only one set of beliefs made sense. And then it let human nature do the rest. I want to hear from you. Has anything like this happened to you or someone in your family? Have you ever noticed your feed changing your mood or your opinions without you realizing it? Tell me your story in the comments, because I think the more we talk about this, the harder it becomes for these machines to work in the dark. And if you're sitting there right now thinking about one person in your life who needs to hear this, your mother, your brother, your neighbor who's been acting a little different lately, send them this video. It might be the most important 15 minutes they'll spend this week. If this is your first time here, I put out a new episode every other day, and I'll be honest with you, it only gets more interesting from here. The stuff we're getting into next is going to make you look at things you interact with every single day in a completely different way. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.